This episode of the Gooner Ramble is sponsored by the new sporting betting app called Bookie. That's Bookee. Sign up using the promo code podcast, deposit and bet £10 in multiple bets for a free £10 bet. Please bet responsibly.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Gooner Ramble podcast. I'm your host Giles, and joining me is my effervescent friend Akhil. You can find him on Twitter at 10. Akhil, how you doing, mate? You alright?
Yeah, you can. You can find me there, and you can find me here too. I'm very well.
Good man. And we've got
still doing dry January, just in case anyone really cares. Still going strong.
I didn't realise that was still a thing.
Oh well, it is with me. I mean, what is it? The 11th today. Still going strong, man. This is special.
Are you being sponsored by JD and Coke by any chance?
They've sent me a bottle for the 1st of Feb. Yeah.
Good stuff. And in the background, we have also, not one, but two special guests. We have, first of all, we've got from the Highbury Hills podcast, we've got the one and only Soccer Diva. Sophie, how are you doing? Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. It's nice to be back in the Gooner Ramble pod mix hub community, call it what you want. Missed you guys, and thanks so much for having me on today. I appreciate it.
Been a long time coming, in it. It's been a long time coming to get you back on, but glad to have you back on.
That's because you cancelled on us last time we had planned it.
Listen, there were reasons.
Whatever. We don't blame other people.
Can we discuss that? Not also, I don't know if this guy does he blogs every day of the year, but Suburban Gooner Chris Howard, you can find him on Twitter at Suburban Gooner Chris, do you actually blog every day, 365 days a year?
No, I miss Christmas Day and if I'm really hungover. So New Year's Day I didn't. Actually, I wrote a pre-match before that. So
slacker.
Yeah, I am. So given that you two, Giles and Akhil, have already started like an old married couple, does that make us your kids?
The bastard stepchildren, perhaps.
Yeah.
The one who let us all down by not blogging on New Year's Day.
Stuff in it. All right, let's move it on quickly. Okay, so beginning of the week, we were out defending our FA Cup title at Nottingham Forest. Everyone, I imagine, thought it would be a simple academic fixture affair. As it turns out, we lost. We went out terribly. I'm going to start by asking you guys what your thoughts and your feelings were, and I'm going to start with our first guest. I'm going to ask Sophie, what were your thoughts coming out of the game? What really stuck out to you?
You know, there's been a lot to be kind of depressed about this season. And I think, season after season over the last 5 or 6, we've slowly seen Arsenal's regression. But I can take losing to Manchester United. I say that very loosely, guys. I think you know exactly what I mean by that. I don't expect to win every game against, the top 5-6 sides. But I do expect Arsenal Football Club to win against Nottingham Forest. And I felt like we, for the very first time, disrespected the trophy that has been our bread and butter for the last 4 years. We've won 3 out of the last 4. We've been dominant. Last year was amazing to beat Manchester City in the semi-final and then go on and crush Chelsea in the final in the manner of which we did was one of the highlights of the year. So to come out as current holders, choose a questionable side to start our defence. And even though we had the Chelsea game that followed that, I felt that it was really indicative of either one, we didn't care about the FA Cup anymore because we've won it 3 of the last 4 years. Number 2, yes, we have injuries and we have problems, in that regard, and we always do. And sometimes we're very ill prepared for that. But for me, I just felt like it was really juvenile of Arsene Wenger to have a lackluster bench. There was nobody on the bench who could come on and turn a game. I know City were playing Burnley in their tie, but, all of these other top 5-6 teams in the Premier League have been prepared having a really good bench. And for me, I'm okay if you want to field a weakened side, but have a plan B in place. I wasn't happy ahead of the time. I was really vocal on Twitter about the team selection. I was arguing with the girls actually because they felt like Wenger actually maybe got it right. But I felt that of all of his team selections, finally taking the gamble backfired on him. But credit to Forest. They absolutely deserved to win and they shredded us in midfield. And for me, one of the problems that we have is the gap from our midfield to our defence widens with every game. And I just don't understand how we're not fixing these things in training and on the pitch, because we seem to make the same mistakes at the same points in games over and over again, and we're not doing anything to rectify it.
Chris, following on from Sophie's opening spiel, I mean, do you agree with a lot of what she said? Is there anything else that you saw?
Yeah, I think one word which I've seen people in either side of this camp here on this particular word of that game at the weekend, and that's disrespect. And actually, I am 100% in the same camp as Sophie, because I think he did completely disrespect the FA Cup. I mean, I had a couple of debates and discussions with people online who were saying you can't say a manager who's won the FA Cup that many times can disrespect it. But I don't necessarily agree with that. Of course, you can disrespect something in the present day. I mean, nobody's going to take away the fantastic times that he's given us, the fact that he's won the FA Cup more than anyone else. He's clearly he's going to go down in FA Cup history as somebody who is a fantastic sort of advocate of the cup. But in this instance, I do think he disrespected the FA Cup. It felt to me like that team, but also the bench that he put out was like a League Cup team. It was the type of, when we normally get the Sheffield Uniteds, in the third round, the fourth round, and we're at home, and it's a League Cup team, and, we all go along and we pay our £10 for our tickets, and we have a little bit of a laugh, and, we'll get the odd Carlos Vela-esque chip, and everyone goes home happy because we've scored a couple of goals. That's what it felt like. But home games and away games against these types of gritty, dogged, determined opposition, they're totally different things. Nottingham Forest were fired up, but I just think also tactically, I think he just got it completely wrong, because the four at the back with no pace in that team, as Sophie mentioned, the gaps in between the midfield were ridiculous. But also, I mean, I put a message out on the time. It was, you could almost imagine the caretaker manager's team talk before the match was, okay, gentlemen, you've seen that lineup. So what we're going to do is balls into the channels. We've got an 18-year-old who's going to run his socks off all day long, and he's going to get in behind. So let's just see how many times that we can pop those balls in, and they did it all day.
Ax, were you surprised by Wenger's selection? Were you surprised by? Do you think there's an element of, we'll just turn up and we'll roll these over? They're struggling in the Championship. They're not much. They've got a caretaker manager. We'll just roll these over.
You know what? Chris used the word disrespect. I've used the word arrogant more than anything. I mean, it might be borderline disrespectful as well, but for me, it was just arrogance. That team was arrogance. That team was, Arsene Wenger always says he'll pick a team that's good enough to win. And, if you take that on face value, you totally agree with it. That, when you are playing in these cups, when you are playing in a congested fixture list, you don't want to sometimes overstretch yourself, and you do want to pick a team that is good enough to win. Now, for the first time, I questioned that was that team good enough to win? Playing with the back four. I mean, we saw Callum Chambers against, Rob Holding against Chelsea. We saw him against Forest. He looked like two completely different players. And it's was that team good enough to beat Forest? Some would argue yes, some would argue no. But, without having that insurance policy on the bench, it baffled me how weak our bench was. And I looked around kind of the other top teams, and most of us saw the Merseyside derby on Friday with Liverpool playing a fairly strong team. Harry Kane, played for Spurs. I think Man United played a slightly stronger team, but obviously they had Derby at home, so it's a little bit different. But and especially because we're not in the Champions League, right? So usually by this stage, our big players would have played at least 4 to 5 games more than they have this season. You know, sometimes match day 6 is sometimes a dead rubber, so you don't get your big players sometimes going. But you know, it could be more if you had played a qualifier, but you've at least played 5 games more, which we haven't this season. So you just think, why was there not a couple of players that can just turn the game? I mean, I think of Alexis Sanchez, and you know, people have told me, oh, we didn't want to cut tie him because it takes a few million off his fee, but he was 60 million in the summer. He's now City are offering 20 million, so I'm afraid we've gone past that. We've actually lost about 40 million on him anyway. What's a couple of extra million? You know, for me, Alexis Sanchez should have been in Nottingham. Should have started, let alone been on the bench, but at least been on the bench, because at the end of the day, he's still an Arsenal player. We know he's going to go either this month or in the summer. So for me, work him. You know, he hasn't got a World Cup anyway. Just work him to the ground. I mean, you know, why not? We are paying him, you know, 130, 140 grand a week to play for our football club. So play for our football club. So yeah, I was very, very disappointed. I mean, for me, the FA Cup's so special. It's not only obviously saved maybe Arsene Wenger, but it's given us such great days at Wembley. It gives us the additional day of the Community Shield as well, which we've done well in. Our record at Wembley is very good as well. And yeah, I wanted to be at Wembley. You know, I've totally lost interest in the FA Cup now because we're not in it. And that really, really annoys me. Not even disappoints me, it annoys me. Usually Arsenal disappoint me, but on Sunday, Arsenal really made me angry because that's how much I love the FA Cup.
Yeah, it was a shoddy display indeed. The thing is, what really got me is that despite all the changes, we had 4, you had Ospina, you had Debussy, Mertesacker, you had Welbeck and Walcott in that lineup. That's pretty experienced. Half of that team has got over 600-700 games of football in them, and not one of them. Okay, you could probably argue that Ospina, apart from the first goal, you know, organising the wall for the first goal. Apart from that, he was pretty good. But you're looking at those guys in times like that. You're looking at your experience to sort of lift.
You need a balance as well. I mean, a lot of those boys haven't played much, you know, recently. It's very difficult to play sort of a month before against Bate Bolarov, you know, at home, and then suddenly to maybe even West Ham in the cup, and then a month later have to play again. There's no rhythm there, you know. Welbeck now played 2 in a row, but he hadn't had that rhythm. Theo Walcott certainly hasn't got that rhythm. You know, the centre backs have been in and out a little bit. It's you know, from that second team, we've actually lost a lot of quality because Jack Wilshere now isn't in that second team. He's now in the first team. So actually, if you look at the team as a whole, as that second team, so to speak, it's actually lost probably its best player. And Olivier Giroud's out as well. So, you know, if you're going to lose 2 big players like that, you sort of need to at least replace them, so to speak, and we haven't done that.
But shouldn't Theo Walcott at 115 grand a week, or is it 120? I forget right now. Be prepared to come in and play. He's a professional footballer that's been at Arsenal Football Club for so many years, and he's looking for an opportunity to shine. And every player, in my opinion, whether you're a regular starter or not, you should be ready to grab your moment. And Mertesacker's comments after that game, for me, were very indicative of how broken we are on the outside and also on the inside. And I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just being very honest and authentic in kind of, you know, my perception of what happened in particular in that game. And, you know, El Neni didn't take his chance. Walcott didn't. Welbeck didn't. Don't get me started on Iwobi. I'm sure that's going to come up at some point. And to be honest, Debussy's the only one I can forgive because he's really been mismanaged and absolutely not given an opportunity in a time, especially where Bellerin has been very lackluster until that phenomenal equaliser against Chelsea. So in my opinion, you have to be ready and prepared to come in and perform, and none of them were.
No, I mean, I totally agree there. I'm more thinking from kind of the manager's point of view here. that he clearly doesn't trust a lot of them anymore. And if you don't trust a lot of them to not put anything on the bench, it's such a big risk. I mean, for me, it's, you all know how much I used to love Theo Walcott, and I think, 100 goals for this club, what a player he's been, but he hasn't been the same for about a year. And I can see that when Theo Walcott now plays, I'm not really expecting much. Yeah, of course Theo should be taking the chance, and of course he should want it more, and of course he should remember there's a World Cup and all that sort of stuff. But if I was a manager and picking him, I would think, I'm not sure if he can deliver for me anymore, which means I need a backup here. I either don't play him, or if I play him, I'm prepared that I've got so-and-so to come off the bench, because if he doesn't deliver, he's off. So I'm looking at it from that point of view, that risk point of view, and it was just such a big risk. But yeah, of course, players should want to take their chance. We are in a World Cup year, we're in January, so there's that shop window. You want to get into that side, but at the moment, some of those fringe players just are nowhere near.
So, Chris, before we move on to Iwobi as such, do you think?
So mad at him.
Do you subscribe to the view in any way, shape, or form that maybe Wenger has had his eye on the the first leg semi-final at Chelsea, and decided he's going to hedge his bets? He's going to top load his best players in the first leg of the semi-final, and then use the scout team, the fringe players for this one, and we'll get through. We'll muddle through. Do you think there could have been any element to his thinking with that lineup?
I think certainly that's probably played part in his thinking. Personally, I'm not really sure why that is, because you can still play the start. I mean, as Akhil said, is that team that started against Nottingham Forest good enough? I think that team was good enough. If it's set up in the right way, I think it is good enough. But I think what you do is you mitigate your risk by having yourself some quality on the bench. And there was an opportunity to play Alexis on the bench, or there was an opportunity to have more senior players on the bench just in case. And again, arrogance, disrespect, I won't go back over that. But yeah, certainly he's clearly, you only have to look at the team sheet that came out last night to see that he'd prioritised that particular game over Nottingham Forest. And in the cold light of day, perhaps, with hindsight, we can say, we've got a 0-0 draw. We can take Chelsea back to our place, and all of a sudden we're a home game away from a cup final. So, that's one point, but it still sort of sticks in the throat, doesn't it? I mean, I'm sitting in my study now, looking at the 3 flags that I picked up from the 3 cup finals, and thinking, I don't get anywhere near that. I don't even get to think about that this year, and that's quite. It leaves a bad taste.
Chris, do you think he went strong because he lost in the third round?
No, I don't know why. And I don't have any kind of evidence to back this up. I just think that he did just reprioritise that competition, which is amazing for Arsene Wenger, because that's the first time, if that is true, and we'll never really know out until this famous book comes out, which probably will need to be about. It'll need to cut down half of the Amazon rainforest by the size of it. It's the first time he's prioritising his entire Arsenal career. He didn't even prioritise when we got into a cup final and got knocked out to Didier Drogba. So this is, if it is true, then wow, what a step change.
Did you, moving the conversation on, straight after the cup game, Akhil, you'd have been on your way back from Nottingham, so there was a documentary called No Hunger in Paradise, and it's focused on the price kids have to pay. Kids pay to sort of make it to the top. And Wenger was a part of that documentary, and he said that a lot of kids, when they get to that stage, you have to have the hunger. You still have to have the hunger to be able to make it. You still have to have the hunger. And it was really poignant because obviously a day or two later, the Sun came out with the headline about, Iwobi partying 36 hours before or 48 hours within 48 hours of the Nottingham Forest game. And some people may think that, he's just a young lad. He's 21. Let him go out and party. He's 36 or 48 hours before a game. Why are we over-egging? Why is a mass hysteria about his antics? Chris, starting with you, what are your feelings when you saw the story come out about Iwobi? And then, I don't know if you saw the documentary. Did you see the documentary on Sunday?
No, I haven't seen the documentary. No.
Okay, so the feelings around the Iwobi story, and basically, what kind of effect, or what kind of light does it throw on young players trying to come up through the system and make it as stars?
Well, I think it's the danger of the modern day culture of making it at Premier League clubs and being. This is probably a story which has been retold ad infinitum, but young footballers that are coming up through the youth ranks, they get money and they get it quick. And I'm a human being. If somebody gave me all of these thousands of pounds at age 18, 19, and said, crack on, mate, I probably would have had a lot more parties than Iwobi did, and I probably would have done it 24 hours beforehand because I'm a silly boy, and that's the sort of thing that I would do. But so there's that point of it which I understand. It's not right. When you're a footballer, you do have to acknowledge that you do sacrifice things in your life, and to make it at the top, you need to be mature enough at an earlier age to appreciate that you do have to sacrifice stuff. When I was 16, 17, there was a lad who was in the Charlton Youth Academy. He never actually made it, but all of us thought, because we're all underage drinkers at 17, living in Harlow in Essex, obviously. We all went out and he was there, and we were all sort of sharing a beer, and someone handed him a beer and he just said, I can't, because I'm in this youth setup, I'm not going to do that. That's the kind of mentality that a footballer needs to have and I'm not saying it won't be beer or drugs or whatever it is, but it's that kind of discipline that you need to have from that age. And you've either got that mentally and you have that drive, or you don't. And then that's when you start to see players fall away, because they have natural talent, but they then just fall away. Yeah.
If you've ever seen the Cristiano Ronaldo film as well, there's a bit that always gets me, and he says that, you know what, your body's your temple. For about 20 years, you just have to commit to your body for 20 years to be the best you possibly can.
Absolutely.
After that 20 years, you enjoy it. You do what you want. You then enjoy your success. So what he means by the money you've earned, you then spend it. And you know what? Who can argue with a man like that who's achieved what he has in the game? It's just, if Cristiano's telling you to do that, I think people should listen, But then at the same time, we've heard so much from, with the whole 89 film, we've heard more from that squad in the last couple of months than we have for years. And, all three of us were at the premiere, and then, we were at the party after where we spoke to players, and all of them, nearly all of them that we got into the conversation with commented about how football's changed in terms of people didn't have mobile phones and stuff. We were talking to Lee Dixon and Ian Wright about, isn't this just great? You're in a pub with fans pretty much, and on the 89 day they went to winners and things like that. And it's like, I think Lee Dixon said it wouldn't happen now just because of the camera phones and all that sort of stuff. And football has changed, and players need to change with it. But then, Iwobi at 20 years old needs guidance. He needs that club to help him. And I'm not saying they don't, because I know that, the Arsenal are the one club that does a lot of media training compared to all the other clubs. They have, professional people from the media in training their young players from a young age. That's why England always used to put Theo Walcott, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Jack Wilshere, Kieran Gibbs in front of the media, because they're good speakers. And Liverpool have now started to do the same with Chamberlain, from what he's learned at Arsenal. So in some aspects we're very good, but these players need help. They need support. They need their families. They need their clubs to really support them, because they're young lads. As Chris just said, if you give me or him the money, then we'll probably be worse, because that's how people are. But as a footballer, you really do need that guidance. And I don't know, are they getting it? Maybe. Do they listen? Maybe not. I don't know. But, there needs to be even more, because otherwise you're going to see more very talented players just go down the wrong kind of street, so to speak.
Sophie, Jack Wilshere did an interview with Soccer AM last week, and during that interview he let slip that Alex Iwobi is regularly fined for turning up late by per Mertesacker. And they kind of laughed it off, but that kind of made, for those that watched it, a lot of people were like, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't sound good.
I miss the days when young players had to earn their crust. I miss the days where they did have to clean boots and work their way up to being on £30,000 a week. Instead, now we just, the instant gratification in life in general, it's generational too. And I'm a Generation Xer, and I work with millennials all day long, and I love and adore them. But there is this sense of entitlement as well in this, I don't have to graft. Someone asked me the other day, how did you become VP of publicity at like 20th Century Fox? And I'm like, I worked my ass off to do it. And I think there's a generational gap in that now you just want to get there without taking any of the steps to really be rewarded for why you arrived there. And for me, Iwobi is one of those players that just makes bad decisions over and over again. And the club are accountable and responsible for him. And we've become a club of enablers a little bit, because he had no business being in that team against Chelsea the other night. None whatsoever. If I was Arsene Wenger or Steve Bold, I would have pulled him aside. Fining him 2 weeks' wages is not enough for me. You know what, son? You're going to play in the reserves until I see an attitude adjustment. And then maybe from an attitude adjustment, he would have a bit more of a gratitude attitude. Make him sweat for his spot. Make him realize he needs to make better decisions. And Axe is right. You see Ronaldo as a role model. And I love when he says, after I'm finished playing, I'm going to live like a king. And I think that is just such a beautiful thing, because he's sacrificing, and he's become one of the best players in the world because of his sacrifice. You can't allow this kind of behavior to happen. And he's not a very, a little bit like Xhaka on the pitch. He's not a very smart footballer either. And so I'm thinking, if that was Alexis Sanchez, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. 2 Copa Americas with Chile, played for Barcelona, overachiever, works his arse off. Maybe it was a one-off. But with Iwobi, I feel that something needs to be done much, much harsher in the disciplinary area. And I felt like it was a missed opportunity for Arsene Wenger to put his foot down and say that type of behavior won't be tolerated. I don't care whether he drank at the party. The point is he was at the party before an important game. And then in hindsight, we now know why he played so shy in that game. And that's heartbreaking.
So, Ax, you mentioned guidance. The kids need guidance these days. And it is about the company you keep, right? Iwobi's done wrong, but one of my greater concerns is the fact that his so-called friends actually videoed that or pictured it or whatever, and then sent it and leaked it, around on social media. You've got to be careful of the company you keep.
Yeah, to me that wasn't even friends. I mean, it was probably just people there. I mean, the actual text was Iwobi should be sleeping or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be sleeping. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just makes you think. Well, it's within because Wenger said it was within the 48-hour curfew time frame thing. So someone's encouraged him to go out within that time frame. So you've got to be careful of the company you keep. Also, secondly,
that's so true, Giles. We see that a lot in NFL football here. It happens all the time. You got to keep better company, 100%.
Exactly. You see, I mean, in NFL, there's always somebody on a marijuana charge or a gun-related charge or firearm charge. And you're thinking, what kind of, you're a poster child for a generation here. In Iwobi's case, he is the poster child for the youth academy right now. People like Maitland-Niles, people like Nelson, people like Willock, people like Ben Sheaf, all those kids that are coming up are looking at Iwobi and saying, if he can get there, I can get there too. And remember, Iwobi hasn't actually gone out on loan like lots of kids usually do. A lot of kids usually go out and have to earn their spurs. What's his name? Harry Kane went on 2 or 3.
Jack Wilshere.
Bolton, David Beckham. The list goes on and on. Iwobi was thrust into the limelight pretty quickly. obviously, I know that for a fact that Man City were talking to his people. So maybe he was boosted. Maybe he got a bit gassed. Maybe, obviously Wenger knows he's got a bit of a gem on his hands. He decided, right, I'm going to thrust him. I'm going to fast track him into the first team. So now he's an example for the young boys coming up. And I'm thinking, well, he's kind of had it. He's been fast tracked, and they might be thinking, well, he's not had to really pay his dues. He's sort of like, as Sophie said, he's sort of like, he's kind of made it to the top pretty quickly. Is that the route? If he can do it, can I do it? Can I go out partying maybe, on a down low or something? Would Wenger, turn a blind eye? I mean, what's the disciplinary? What is the club? We don't know what the club's code of conduct is. We don't know what their disciplinary procedures are, but it just seems a bit lax. We've heard about the Colney crash for many, many years, and if this kind of just all kind of fits into that sort of relaxed kind of.
We saw it with Alex Song as well. He was very similar, not maybe in the partying, but in that sort of laziness, and he was always late for the coach. And funny enough, on that 89 night, we asked Steve Bold, is the rumours true? Did you get Alex Song on the wall? But he denied it. But, it got too much for the club, and the club just sold him, pretty suddenly, because they had enough. So, you don't want someone like Alex Iwobi to get there as well, but you need to, I agree with Sophie. I was shocked to see him in that team against Chelsea. I thought he was dropped for sure. But, to see him there and that's the sort of manager Wenger is. It's a bit of a, actually, mate, I'm going to give you a chance and you're going to prove me right and you're going to have a stormer tonight. That's the sort of manager he is. Rather than actually,
right or wrong,
you've effed up here. You're out of the team for a few weeks. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But
Sophie doesn't end up on a scrap sheet. We don't see him somewhere in Russia like a Frimpong, or something like that. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't rate him. I don't rate him at all.
You know what? Right now, I think it's come to a point where I think he needs a loan. Forget the antics, but he's just. Since bursting onto the scene a season and a half ago, he's actually probably regressed, wouldn't you say?
He certainly hasn't developed.
Yeah.
Needs to be humbled.
I think this could be possibly the biggest, probably 7-8 months of that boy's entire life from a footballing perspective. Because if you think about it, he's now hit rock bottom in terms of his form is through the floor. These people, particularly the younger players, they keep abreast of what's going on social media. They know what's happening. They know people are talking about Iwobi. And even before these antics, the news wasn't positive and it was based on his form. And his form has been through the floor. So you've got a guy whose form's through the floor, who's made a silly decision, who's been playing very, very poorly, who people are talking about alone. I don't think Wenger will, because by the looks of the injury list, we're running out of players. But so essentially, if he does not do something, he's got to change, the people that he hangs around with. He's got to change his mentality. He's got to change his attitude. This is the 6-7 months of his life where he gets to decide, what am I going to be? Am I going to be like Ronaldo? Am I going to be like someone like Frank Lampard, who actually had to really, really work at everything in order to get to where he wanted to go? Am I going to be like that? Or am I going to be like Alex Song? So it's a real crossroads, and he's going to the World Cup in Nigeria. They are going to the World Cup, aren't they? Yeah. He's going to the World Cup. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They're going to the World Cup in June, July, and that's the end of that sort of 7-8 month cycle. And if he picks up his form, and if he's playing well, I am very sceptical about that, because I think I'm in the same camp as you, Sophie. I'm not convinced that he's really got it up there, particularly from in the final third as well. But if he does show what he showed when he first burst onto the scene, he has a good finish towards the season, and he goes off to the World Cup and has a good World Cup, that could be, again, you've then got the next stage, which is show that, you're gonna kick on from this and not just rest on your laurels and say, well, I've made it now.
From Saul to Paul.
I mean, you say young players, are aware on social media, but I tell you what, there was sections of the away end yesterday were singing something about he should have stayed at the party. I think it was probably after that shot he took. And
that just shows you his decision making. Terrible.
Yeah. I mean, if I said this last year about Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, but if Alex Iwobi is not putting extra work in after training, before training, whatever, just to work on his final ball, his finishing. Because when he has that, even yesterday, when he has that ball, when he's driving with that ball, he looks like a real player. He has that quick feet. He can get the ball to feet turn and, kind of get into space. And he does that really well. But it's just when he gets into that final third, when it's either a final ball to be played or a shot to be taken, he absolutely fluffs it. And, Dennis Bergkamp wasn't too good to be practicing after hours. So if he was,
he didn't need to.
Then, but what I'm trying to say is he was that good. He used to practice, which means everyone else needs to practice, if you know what I mean. Because no one's better than Dennis Bergkamp,
Yeah, I mean, if you're Theo Walcott and Iwobi's getting ahead of you in the team after that debacle, Theo's got to be sitting there thinking, I've got to go. If I can't get into this team today with what happened with Iwobi, then when will I get into this team? So lots of ramifications from the selections over the last 2 games and the implications that will have in January and also in the summer as well.
Very good point, Soph. Very good point. Going on to the Chelsea game, I mean, what did you make of his performance, Sophie, overall? Because a lot of people are saying that he had a decent performance. I'm looking at who scored. They've given him a 7.3 rating. One Football have given him quite a high rating. How did you rate his performance overall?
I felt like I didn't notice his performance, which to me meant that it was an average performance, because I was just so blown away by how the back three played, especially under the guise of Mustafi. I felt this was, we've seen some good games from Mustafi. Yes, he's made some mistakes, but in this particular game, he showed true leadership qualities and to me came across very much like a captain. I know he took the armband off Jack when Jack went off injured, but I was so focused on how Chambers turned it around in terms of the nightmare he had in the previous game to how he played today, the other night. But I felt like Mustafi was much more vocal at the back. I almost felt like he played better without Koscielny beside him. Holding had a really good game too, and I felt Holding and Chambers fed off Mustafi greatly. So I think Iwobi was kind of irrelevant because the other players to me just shone so much more. Wilshere, Maitland-Niles, once again, what a little rock star he is, and someone who absolutely for me has solidified his place, in the first team. And for me, the worst thing out of that game was Lacazette was so isolated, and I hope people don't look at his performance in that match thinking, oh my gosh, we bought a dud, because I don't think we've bought a dud. I feel like he's been so mismanaged. And to take him off and bring on Sanchez, I think Welbeck is the one that should have come off, because Lacazette could have fed off Sanchez and had some type of, balls being fed through to him. So that was for me the biggest negative of the entire game.
He had been ill for a day or two.
He'd been sick, hadn't he?
Yeah. So I think it was just a bit of fitness there.
He was probably on empty.
But he was also very isolated. He had had nothing going for him playing all on his own up front like that. And also then once Wilshere went off as well, and then without Ozil, there was really nothing going for him. Yeah. No creativity going for him whatsoever. Yeah. So Iwobi came across as very irrelevant in that game to me. And then that missed pass when he had 2 players flanking him on either side. He could have made a pass left or right. And he chose that, and that just shows you where his mindset was, which also reiterates that he should never have been playing that game to begin with.
Do you know what surprised me about that chance? It just reminded me of when you go to watch an under 9 or 10s game and you've got a kid who's just really fast and he's dribbling with the ball, and all of a sudden the ball gets a little bit too far ahead of him, but he hasn't got the brain power to think, I need to release this now. So he just sort of does this weird toe poke thing that I was just like, what are you, 10? Literally just release the ball one step earlier and all of a sudden you've got yourself an assist and everyone's patting you on the back.
It just showed to me, it just seemed like he'd done everything, as I said, he'd done everything right, and then the moment of truth, he just wasn't big enough for the moment. The moment was too big for him, and he ended up doing either or, nothing, kind of thing. It's like
and that's the bit everyone remembers as well. So
But I mean, Sophie made some good points, Ax, about performances as a whole of the team. The defense really tight. Managed to keep them at our door at bay. I mean, it wasn't an open game like the game last week, the 2-2 game. What particularly stood out in that game for you?
Yeah, I think we knew the blueprint from earlier on in the season when we got the identical result there in the league. I think it was about sort of keeping it tight. I mean, Iwobi and Welbeck played that day as well. So it was about keeping it tight. You had concerns in there as well. I suppose, you thought how will sort of Niles deal with it again and things like that. But I mean, generally, we looked solid. We rode our luck at times, let's be honest. There was that block, Mustafi block, that could have gone anywhere, and there was a couple, but generally we were gritty. We finally showed a bit of character, and it just looked like we knew after Sunday we had to show this. And yeah, we got a decent 0-0, and we now take it back to the Emirates where you'd expect a totally different game. And yeah, we'll kind of see what happens. Of course, the away goal rule comes into it after extra time, in the semi-finals. So it is a little bit different. We have to look at it as we need to win the game outright. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that second leg, and we wanted to stay in it, and we've done more than that. We're totally in it, and generally you would make the team that goes away and draws 0-0 to come back actually favourites. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
Chris, before we move on to other subjects, just wanted to talk about the game really briefly. The setup, were very tight. As Sophie and Akhil already said, Mustafi really sort of like managed the two younger guys really well. And I think after Sunday's performance, they both came out with a lot of credit from that game, from Wednesday's performance. Also, what I noticed is we tried to get that early goal, I feel. And when that didn't occur, we sort of like set back and sort of like allowed them onto us. And really, although Chelsea outnumbered us in midfield, they had a free man. We had a free man in defence, and that would almost always be Holding, who was free to clear up a lot of the danger that was coming down Maitland-Niles' flank. It was quite a cagey, and some people would say quite a boring game. But what kind of highlight? What stood out for you? What elements stood out for you?
So I think certainly what made me chuckle was I think after about 60 minutes being repeatedly told by the Sky Sports presenters that this was a fantastic game. I actually thought the game was very slow. I think Arsenal actually deliberately slowed the game in terms of the passing. Yep. You could clearly tell that there'd perhaps been some lessons learned in that. Okay, so we went to three at the back. We had two very, very, very pacey wide men, and what we were clearly trying to do is be very, very narrow. So Welbeck and less so much Iwobi, but certainly Welbeck was very notable that they were dropping a bit narrower, and I think Welbeck perhaps sacrificed some more of his sort of attacking side of his game so that he could close down, because that's the type of player that he is. So because we then compressed in those sort of balls, there was Victor Moses did get in behind Maitland-Niles a couple of times, and I think Alonso got in once or twice, but it was really about, all right, so we're not going to let you play. If you're going to get through in behind us, we're going to try and push you out wide, because we know that we've got two pacey fullbacks that can keep track, as opposed to on Sunday, which was, we're just going to put balls in behind into the channel, because we know that Debuchy and Maitland-Niles obviously is pacey anyway, but Debuchy certainly on that side, he hasn't got the pace to keep up, and we suffered from it. But yeah, I mean, from my side, it was good that we decided that we were actually going to then just push Chelsea out wide a bit more when they're going to try and get in behind, but we actually had the pace to deal with it. I think Akhil was right though. I think we did ride our luck at times, and in the second half, one of the problems I had in the second half was that we couldn't get out of our own half, and the reason for that was because we pushed so narrow. Whenever you could see it, whenever he had the ball or Jacques had the ball, and it was very, very tight and compact and a lot of bodies in that middle, you need one Arsenal player to just, And this is
There was
where
no outball,
there's no Theo Walcott almost. I mean, I'm no fan of Theo Walcott, but you could just see him just hugging the touchline on that right-hand side in acres of space where a ball could be flicked out to, and then the play just sort of spreads out from there. And that didn't really happen in the second half, and we ended up getting penned in. But again, as Sophie said, credit to the defence, they stood firm.
I think there was, even though we were rode our luck a bit, they didn't really create much more than half chances. I think they had a couple of headers that, quite fraught, but, defensively we were set up really well, and they really made mainly just half chances that we conceded. Good performance overall. I was really happy for Holding, because on Sunday, I don't know if you noticed, Ax, but on Sunday apparently got a lot of abuse when he came over to acknowledge the fans. Whereas last night, he came over again,
Yeah, he did a little bit when he came over at the end. I think there was a couple of videos as well online and stuff. But then, if he probably wasn't the only one, after that kind of defeat, it was pretty bad. But here, he got a good
ovation. Yeah.
Good ovation. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's dry January. You see, it's affecting me now. But yeah, he done well. And that's one of the takeaways I take, that he sort of, we talk about this mental strength thing a lot, and we have a bit of a laugh about it. But he's a young lad. He's a very young lad who's been at the top of the game in terms of FA Cup finals for he's done the most he can do in his short career, and he's had a blip, and Forest was probably his worst moment, but he bounced back, and he played well. So fair play to the guy. I think there's such a difference. With Alex Iwobi, the jury is out. He hasn't helped himself with this partying and things like that, so you can understand why fans are a little bit torn and upset. But with someone like Rob Holding, you just feel he just needs that support. He needs that support internally from the club, externally from fans, and he just needs to be managed well, I guess, and obviously coached as well, but managed well, and by that I mean when he does play and when he doesn't play and things like that. But I really believe we have a player in Rob Holding. So
and let's not forget, real quick before you move on, they started Hazard, Morata, Villian played in that game, Fabregas, Kante. We had no Ozil, no Giroud, no Ramsey, no Kolasinac, no Koscielny, and Sanchez was on the bench. So as bad as we've been this season, that to me was a brilliant away performance to take it back to ours. And I fancy us in the second leg. I really do. I think that we're going to be more full strength. And I think that, there'll be something to smile about again, because I think that we might end up back at Wembley.
And I mean, in a funny sort of way, no FA Cup means that the week after we don't have a game. So you can literally give 110%. You can give that extra 10% because you've got a lot longer recovery time. And I mean, February could be absolutely ridiculous. We could only have about 4 or 5 games in February, and 2 of them are the Europa League. So,
couple of free weekends. Sophie, I wanted to ask you about VAR. Couple of decisions on Wednesday night. One in particular that took a little bit of time, quite some time to come to a conclusion, to come to a decision. You guys in America long been using VAR and video technology and whatnot. What are the benefits of it? What are the takeaway? What are the negatives on it? And do you feel that it should be given a chance over here in Europe?
I really do, only because the stakes are so high now, and the ramifications of bad decisions. For example, that West Brom decision could come back and could be the difference between us finishing 4th or 5th. Now, I'm not saying we're going to finish 4th, but it could end up being that way. And so I think that when you're talking about the multi-millions of dollars, pounds that are involved in the game today, what it means to be relegated, what it means to be promoted, what it means to get a Champions League spot versus a Europa League spot or no European spot whatsoever, I think that it's really important to have it in the game. Now, when it's utilized and how it's utilized, I think is still up for debate, because we've even seen certain situations where it's gone to VAR and people still aren't happy with the outcome. I felt like in our game against Chelsea, the referee actually got it right on both occasions, and I feel that VAR backed it up. and it ended up, some people saying that it was the man of the match of the show. In NFL, it's something people have been used to forever. Same in the NBA, same in NHL. It's part of American sports. It's part of the culture and the landscape. And, it has worked in MLS. There are occasions where some fans are happy with it and some are not. But I think that when it comes to the fact that some purists say, well, it takes out the debate of the what ifs. For so long we've complained and we bitch and moan about decisions not going a certain way. And so I think that with everything that's at stake right now, I think that it's important. I think it's going to take a while to get used to it. I think that we need to perfect it. I think that there needs to be, is there 2 referees making the decision right now in the UK with VAR? The referee looks at it, and then there's another referee that also gives his 2 cents. Is that right?
Yeah,
I think so. Somewhere near you in Hounslow, right?
Yeah, well, Heathrow area, Stockley Park. So there's the actual main centre, which is in Stockley Park near Uxbridge, and that's where you have an ex-referee or someone, I don't know, someone who kind of looks at it, flags it up, and then they speak to the referee. So in the UK, I don't think the referee's actually going to look at the replay screen, so to speak. I think they're listening in, and it's somebody else that kind of makes the call.
So that's the part that I think, Axe, that needs to change, because in American sports they go to the screen and they have a look at it for themselves.
I think though, if the referee does say, I think you might have got this wrong, ref, then I think there could be a potential for them to go and view the screen. But if the guy has looked and said no, you're spot on, then obviously there's no point. They don't need to go and kind of check the screen. I think that's how it's going to work.
Do you think this decision, that decision-making process could be sped up? Because,
yes,
with American sports, there's a lot of stop and start, and there's timeouts, there's this and that. So it kind of blends in with the whole thing. Whereas here, it's
and people are used to that culture in American sports, aren't they? In football's such a fast-moving game. You don't want to take the sting out of the moment and the momentum. And I think that's the issue most fans have with it. Here, we're used to that stoppage.
I tell you what, being in the away end, we had absolutely fucking no idea what was going on. We kind of knew there was VAR, obviously, but you're not told when it's used or when it's happening. So, I saw Callum Chambers put, was it Aspecetta to the floor? Yeah. But that's our far end. But at the same time, I think there was a VAR decision being made, and so we weren't really sure what's going on. Has he stopped it for that, but he's not talking to them? And then the bit at the end, the 89th minute with the penalty, the Welbeck on Fabregas, and again, the penalty shout was actually a few minutes before, so everyone had forgotten about it. And then there's just this corner and nothing's happening, and you're just thinking, what are we waiting for? Like, there's no message, it's not on the screen, big screen like it is in other sports. It's just, sorry, like what's going on here? Because we as fans had absolutely no idea.
In MLS here, a coach like Tata Martino, who's taken the helm at Atlanta United, amazing franchise in their inaugural year, felt like it slows down the game. Obviously he's a purist. This is someone who's managed teams across the globe at international and club level as well. But Howard Webb, who kind of heads up the referee and the officials here in the US, feels like it's working. So I think coaches are always going to have something, especially seasoned coaches are going to have perhaps a negative reaction to it, whereas the powers that be are always going to try and prove to fans and the system that it's working.
Yeah, Chris, what do you think? I mean, as a fan viewing, on TV and whatnot, I mean, did you understand what was going on? I mean, in American sports, referees, umpires, they kind of give the sign, don't they? Like there's sort of they kind of mimic the TV side, so at least people know what's going on. But again, it's, as we've been saying, it's the process, isn't it? It's speeding up that process and perfecting it and making it, quick, so it doesn't kind of spoil the flow of the game. I think Thierry Henry made a point that around that corner, the time of the corner, obviously the attacking team, they lose the impetus, don't they? Because now the defending team have time to sort of organise. There's a break of play in a few minutes. We can organise, right, you stand there, blah, blah, blah. Whereas the attacking team now, they don't have the flow. I mean, as a viewer, what's your take on it?
Well, I think the first thing that we obviously got to acknowledge is that this was a test bed environment, really, more than anything else. And so there's always going to be ways in which they can improve upon it. You guys have already mentioned, communication within the stadium. You can make that a little bit more obvious. So perhaps that's something that they'll consider. From a fan perspective, sitting down watching the game, it was a bit tedious. Having to sit there for it was only, to be fair, an extra 15 seconds or so. But I think my opinion on VAR is I'm not quite sure one way or the other, because I actually thought that the foul on, and maybe it's my sort of part-time red and white eyes, but I actually feel that it was a foul on Maitland-Niles, because Moses kicks the bottom of his foot, and all right, he doesn't go down straight away. And what I don't understand is that 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, we were being told that because there's a slight bit of contact, the bottom of Hazard's foot has been kicked, that is a penalty. So I assumed, he's going to give us a penalty here. And then when he didn't, I thought, well, that's ridiculous. And then obviously there's a whole 50%. It's almost like 50% of the audience seems to, or maybe even more, seems to think actually that's not a penalty. It's a little kick out, and maybe Hazard's one wasn't a penalty. I don't know, but you've got that opinion, and I think that's going to always be the challenge of it. From a fan perspective, sitting down, it sort of slows things down a little bit. But because we have more access to people talking, and you've got the commentators talking over the top, it's probably not as it doesn't feel as long as it probably did feel for Akhil just in the stand, just sort of looking around at his mate, saying, "What the bloody hell's going on here?" I
think the Maitland-Niles' problem is he didn't go down clutching his throat, as if he was asphyxiated. So maybe Maitland-Niles should have been a bit more theatrical, and maybe that would have got the decision. Let's move on. Injuries, Akhil. What's going on now? So Jack's going to be out for the Bournemouth game, but he's okay.
He said he's okay. He said a few days. It wouldn't be surprised if he makes it, to be honest. I mean, it was a bit of a sprain. I think we all saw when it happened. I mean, I'm not sure what the camera showed, but it was, I think he blocked something that went out for a corner.
Yeah,
and you could just tell it just landed slightly awkwardly. So, yeah, I think Aaron Ramsey is one of the closest to coming back, whether that's
Nacho?
Sunday or not, I'm not sure. Monreal.
I'm dreading Ramsey coming back. I think that's going to really upset I just feel like whenever he's fit, he plays. He seems to be like one of those players that Wenger just plays because he's fit, whether he's in good form or not. And I'm concerned about how introducing him into the team again could upset the midfield, which has been playing much, much, much better right now.
That's interesting, Sophie. That is interesting. Axe, what's your call on Ramsey?
I think he offers something a lot different to anyone else, and in a team that does lack goals, and let's be honest, this team does lack goals because Lacazette's not scoring. Sanchez isn't scoring as much as he used to. From last year, you've lost Giroud and you've lost Walcott, which was 20 goals each. That's about 40 goals. So we do lack goals, and Aaron Ramsey's someone that can give you the goals. I mean, you could argue that I think we all want to see, as we mentioned it on the last pod, but we all want to see a bit of Jack and Aaron playing together, Wilshere and Ramsey playing together, because again, that's something we've been wanting to see for a while. With Wilshere out, it may be, if he is out on Sunday and Ramsey is back, then obviously it's quite an easy one. You can just sort of bed Ramsey back in. The problem obviously comes when both of them are fit, along with Xhaka. Then what happens?
Happy problem though.
Happy problem. I mean, potentially with Sanchez moving on as well. Could one play further forward in certain games? Maybe, I don't know. But we'll see. I mean, let's put it this way: I'd rather have them fit than not fit. Obviously, we've obviously lost Coquelin. I think El Nenny's probably not anywhere near the starting lineup in proper games. So yeah, I think we kind of need Aaron Ramsey back. So yeah, Ramsey. Hopefully, I think Monreal's not too far behind. Giroud was touted for sort of mid to end January, so that should be kind of maybe second leg potentially on the bench. Koscielny's just had a bit of a breather, hasn't he? And obviously Kolasinac as well, you'd expect back in a week or so. So yeah, hopefully we start to get our players back, and then
okay, so
get them ready.
Big question now, Axe. Alexis, do you sell him this month? Do you keep him to the end of the season?
Yeah, as we've been podcasting, David Ornstein has tweeted sort of in the last hour, and obviously as people listen to this, it would have been probably yesterday or the day before, depending on when you listen to it. But he's kind of said that privately Arsenal have now accepted that they're going to sell him, and they kind of accepted that a few weeks ago, that they'd rather get something for him. I guess it was a call in the summer to see what his numbers are like and to see what his kind of, how he plays. And he had that big dip in the middle. Then he kind of came back a little bit around the Palace game. But generally, maybe Arsenal decided that actually it's not worth keeping him anymore and things like that. He came on yesterday and threw his gloves to the floor, and he's a weird guy sometimes. He's applauding passes that are just awful passes, and you just think, is he doing this for the cameras a little bit and stuff like that? So yeah, I think Arsenal, have accepted they're going to get rid. What's interesting is obviously Man United have come in today, it kind of saying, well, if Man City aren't going to pay it, or will pay it, and we'll even give you Mkhitaryan, who you wanted, 18 months ago. So that's another interesting one. I mean, that's not a bad thing for us, that if that means there's a bit of a bidding war, if that means that pushes City's hands to actually, yes, pay us the 30 million or so, because David Ornstein says City are offering 20, we want 35. He thinks there could be a compromise at about 25, 30. So that would be the price. I think we would take 30 for him, but I think getting a replacement is key, and we obviously saw that on the last day of the window. No Thomas Lemar, Alexis Sanchez stays, so I see that nothing to change there. I think there will be a replacement coming in if we sell him. Who that will be, Malcolm's obviously touted. Mahrez has always been, you always feel he's a bit of a backup. He's in the background a bit. If we don't get our 1, 2 and 3 choice, Mahrez is still there, but yeah, I think Alexis Sanchez.
Player that you'd like to see come in as a replacement?
Oh, you know what? It's tough because, I did get a little excited about Thomas Lemar, and at the time he was playing for France and we saw a bit of him, but I haven't seen much of him since. That's because I haven't watched much of Monaco. Same with Malcolm. I don't really know much about him. So it's one of those where you just, we've obviously changed our backroom. Sven's come in, Raul's come in, or will be coming in. We've got, our scouting system is different. So you just have to trust the people that we've employed. We've brought them in for a reason. We got to trust them to identify the right sort of player for Arsenal. With Granit Xhaka we've talked about a lot, but good player, but does he fit into the Arsenal way? We're not sure. So I think whoever we sign, it's more important they fit into the Arsenal way than anything, because we kind of need them to kind of start quickly, really, especially if we lose Walcott as well. There's an extra man gone, so someone needs to come in and really kind of start well. They won't have too much time to settle in, really.
Sophie, I want you to be committed. Akhil has been very non-committal. I want a committed answer, Sophie. I want something concrete.
I feel that Fabregas was a meltdown. Losing Robin van Persie in the manner in which we did was a breakdown, and Alexis Sanchez is now rock bottom, and we need to go into football transfer rehab. This to me is, and I love my team and I love my club, but this to me is an outrage. And I know that Alexis Sanchez is a diva, but there are lots of managers who manage divas on their team. And he's become more of a diva because he hasn't.
Too. They might marry
him too.
I mean,
they should. He hit rock bottom himself after the disaster that was Bayern Munich earlier this year. And, to not sell him, regardless of whether or not Thomas Lemar came in, that he wanted to go, and now we've devalued him. And so to me, he's already a bad debt. And I wonder, what will our season look like for the rest of the season without him? I am afraid of that, because I don't trust the club anymore to bring somebody in of his quality. Do you know how hard it is to replace Alexis Sanchez? We're talking top 5, 6 player in the world. And to let it get to this point with his contract, the relationship, the fact that we haven't been able to put our arms around him and convince him to stay, to support him and Ozil, to build a team around these two magical players who we were given as a gift, however many seasons ago, is one of the saddest moments for me in Arsenal Football Club. And the fact that we might sell him to Manchester City or Manchester United is heartbreaking. When are we going to learn our lessons? We let RVP go. Fine, it ended badly with RVP, but he went and won the league title the next year. Sell him to Juventus, sell him to PSG, sell him anywhere but to Manchester City or Manchester United. We've become that club now, and we laugh at Tottenham and we laugh at all these other clubs. But the fact that Alexis Sanchez could be wearing light blue or another shade of red in a few weeks, to me, is unforgivable. And once again, it's not just Wenger, it's Gazidis, it's the people behind the scenes allowing this to happen. And I feel like for us as a football team, people think it's bad now, but if people see him in a United shirt or a City shirt, once that sickening visual actually comes to be, that's when the shit's really going to hit the fan. I'm outraged and very upset about the thought of losing Alexis Sanchez.
Chris, what do you say?
All of that.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow. Fuck dry January.
I needed to
Shall I
cough for that.
try? Shall I have a stab at playing devil's advocate? Not at the outrage, because I'm complicit in the outrage with you. I cannot fathom how we're in this situation again, given that we were told that this was not going to be happening now that, we've got all of the money and we're paying off the stadium debt and blah, blah, blah. A devil's advocate, though, is when we did lose Robin van Persie, we couldn't replace his goals. Of course we couldn't, because he scored that many goals for us, and we were over-reliant on him on scoring our goals. But what we did is we went out and bought Lucas Podolski, we went out and bought Olivier Giroud, and we bought Santi Cazorla, and between them, I think they came very, very close, between the three of them, to the same sort of goal tally as Robin van Persie did the season before. So I don't think we can replace him, but I think if you get it right, again, this is the devil's advocate side of me, because I don't actually believe Arsenal and the current infrastructure and the current setup and the manager and the way that they go about transfers is possible to do this. But if they could get it right, if you get someone in who gels with the team, then fantastic. And if I use my example from the Chelsea game, so as an example, you've got a compact midfield, Jack's got the ball, we're interchanging passes, and you've got that one pacey, skillful, tricky wide player who you can release as an output, who then bursts through. That sort of player. So I don't know what that sort of player is. Is it Draxler? Don't really know enough about him. There was talk about Pavon from Boca Juniors. Again, don't know very much about him, but he seems like he's that type of player. If you find somebody who can complement the actual dynamics of the team, you cannot replace Alexis Sanchez, but you can find something different to then improve and enhance the team in this hypothetical, wonderful world where we don't make mistake after mistake after mistake in the way in which we run our football club, the club are run.
Is there a possibility that Akhil said earlier on, what's 5 million? We've lost 40 million. What's 20 million? In my world, I'm thinking, why don't we hang on to Ozil, Alexis till the end of the season and bring in a replacement now? Like, bring him in and in that sense, okay, we're going to lose Alexis for nothing, but he's going to stay with us at the end of the season. We might get into the top four. We could win the Europa League. We might get a domestic trophy. But at the same time, we're not putting all that pressure on a young replacement to match Alexis's output. You're giving the new guy 6 months under the radar, settle in, integrate nicely, so that from the summer onwards, we've got a player that's well integrated in the team. No pressure. If we sell Alexis now, we're not going to get someone like Fekir. We're probably not going to get Draxler. I think Lamar's a bit too expensive. So we're looking at somebody who's going to be 21, 20, 22, who's not really had that much experience, could really potentially be a star, but the pressure to deliver, as Sophie said, to match what Alexis gives us, even in a bad season, to match what Alexis gives us output wise is massive. You know,
probably because we don't do succession planning anymore, the figures that now exist in football are, I think, just scare the all-knowing and all-powerful, not all-knowing, but all-powerful man that is Arsene Wenger. Remember when we did the Invincible season, and in the January he thought, I think I'm going to go out and get Reyes. He's a good young player. I can give him 6 months. He can adapt into the team. And he went out and he bought Reyes because those figures were comfortable. That sort of the money then was comfortable. The money now is not comfortable to a man who, unfortunately, and it breaks my heart to say this because he's brought us so much joy, but to a man who is probably the game is beyond him now from the way that football is, the money that's in football, the way that you have transfer committees at each club, the scouting networks that you have, and stuff like that. I just think we don't do succession planning on players, and we don't do succession planning as a whole club with the administration staff anyway.
I don't know how it's going to turn out. Actually, the last subject I wanted to cover really briefly is Arsene Wenger. We heard today, I don't know, Italian paper called Corriere dello Sport has suggested that Wenger's going to leave this season and Ancelotti's coming in on a 4-year deal.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Well, I don't know about the Ancelotti thing. I mean, one thing, there has been a lot of noise around sort of this potentially being Arsene Wenger's last season, and it all started at the AGM when he kind of hinted at a discussion at the end of the season, which Arsenal, when they were asked to press more about it, they stepped away from that suggestion and said it's more of a standard thing at the end of every year. Of course, we would review the season, review the performance and all that sort of stuff. But, there potentially could be a little bit more to that. There could be a break clause there, even though Arsenal have denied it. It's quite clear that Arsenal and Arsene Wenger know that they didn't handle the situation well last season. That Arsene Wenger's admitted that the uncertainty, within the camp didn't help. Players were coming to him and asking him, is he in or is he out, and all that sort of stuff. So he'll be keen to avoid that, and potentially going a year early is a way to avoid that because it might be a bit of a surprise to people. Potentially. Ancelotti, I mean, we're obviously going for a little bit of a different setup now. We're going for that continental setup. Ivan Gazidis has been very busy behind the scenes. The catalyst of change comment, which was maybe laughed about at the time. Now you're kind of seeing it that actually there is a succession plan here. And in a funny sort of way, this sort of planning has meant that actually Arsene Wenger now can't stay beyond the 2 years. There was even rumours when he signed last year that, last season, that he could sign another 2 years after. But I think these changes have just meant that he definitely can't. So would Ancelotti fit into the setup? He's done it at places like Bayern Munich. He's done it at Real Madrid in that sort of way, even at Chelsea, so to speak, with Roman Abramovich sort of controlling so much. So potentially, yes, 4 years sounds a little bit sort of quite a
excessive,
bit,
isn't it?
Excessive. I mean, everyone's always said that you sort of don't want to be the manager after Arsene Wenger or Sir Alex Ferguson. You want to be the manager after them. Unless your name's Louis van Gaal, obviously, but you don't want to be the David Moyes, and you don't want to be the David Moyes of Arsenal. So, in a way, a steady ship, an Ancelotti for a season, maybe 2 seasons, could work, with the younger kind of coach coming in slightly later, potentially, but I can't see 4 years of Ancelotti. But, this is all just hearsay. I think it's very much Arsene Wenger is quite a passionate man, and you get the feeling with players, with himself, he's a little bit like a fan in terms of match by match, his emotions can change. At the moment, he might be feeling rock bottom, but if Arsenal win the League Cup and progress in the Europa League and start having a decent run in the Premier League, that man will believe he can win the league next season. And you can say that's deluded, you can say, well, whatever, but that's what I believe that man will think, and that might persuade him to stay, whereas potentially if we don't do as well, then maybe not. But I just think that he won't have decided yet. The club might have, or Ivan Gazidis and co might have their view, but Arsene Wenger hasn't decided yet, I don't think. So, yeah, watch this space, I guess.
Sophie, Is a steady hand what we'd need after Wenger, or is revolution what we'd need after Wenger?
So I like to call it an evolution, not a revolution. And I feel like we've supposedly had a steady hand for the last however long, especially in the last 5 or 6 years. Supposedly we've stuck with the steady hand. I love Arsene Wenger and everything he's done for us. He's given us some of the most wonderful football memories that are life memories for so many of us. I wish he would have walked off with the FA Cup under his arm into the sunset after that beautiful victory over Chelsea, but he did not. And so here we are. Now, pre-Bayern Munich, I would have said Ancelotti was the perfect choice because he's a player's player, but at the same time, when you hear rumblings from Bayern Munich that the players didn't like the way he trained, they were pretty much left to their own devices sometimes, do what they want. I don't think that's what Arsenal Football Club needs right now. I have a long shot, and I'm curious to know what you guys think. You can put it out to the Twitter sphere. I would hold the cards and I would wait until after the World Cup. And when Jogi Löw wins his second World Cup for Germany and he solidified his legendary status in German football, I would throw the kitchen sink at him and beg him to come to Arsenal. I think he is exactly who we need. It could guarantee us keeping Ozil. It would give us a defensive prowess that we probably hadn't seen since the Invincibles. And it would give us stability. And that's the type of manager I would give a 4 or 5 year deal to. I think Arsenal should be thinking long term, not short term, because we saw what happened with Manchester United. I think they got it wrong. They thought they had their long term guy, and they were wondering whether or not they should have brought in a short term guy. I think we should be focused on finding the right guy. And for me, someone like Jogi Löw would be a perfect replacement for Arsene Wenger, because I also think that he would stick it for the long haul as well. He wouldn't be in and out, and he would build a legacy similar to Wenger.
Very good point, actually. Yeah, Sophie. I do like what Löw's done with Germany, but his thoughts on building up from the succession plan for the youth, restructuring the whole German Football Association, the academy, so that they've got a constant conveyor belt of players coming through, setting us a pattern in style of play throughout the German age groups. You can see his philosophy. There's a road, there's a blueprint, there's a philosophy. That's a really good point, actually. I didn't really think of Löw. What do you think, Chris?
I think Löw would be a preferred choice. I think more than anything else, what we need to be looking at, and obviously Giles, you know Steve as well. Steve and I SJ Neighbory is on Twitter, had a long conversation about the next man, and actually it's not so much about the name, and it's more about somebody who can fit in with the structure that we have, because ultimately he's going to have to work with Sven, he's going to have to work with Raul Sanelli. Sanelli? I don't know.
Good shot. Good
effort.
Good effort.
He's going to have to. So what we need somebody who can be that coach that almost says, well, you over there, you're doing your bit on player sort of recruitment, and you over there, you're doing the football, the director of football type stuff, and you over there, you're doing your bit. Me, you leave the players to me. I'll sort them out. But what that coach then needs to have, he needs to have an identity. He needs to have a style. We need to have an actual. We need to know what we are as a football club, footballistically speaking. Because at the moment, can anyone really tell what we are? So some games we are like Wednesday night. We set up to contain, to slow the game down, not to be beaten. They've shown that actually this group of players can do that. We then have games where we are just gung ho. We then have games where we can't seem to be able to finish our dinner. I literally have no idea what style Arsenal are as a football club.
That's a very good point. Axe, over to you. You've already made your point, haven't you?
Yeah, I don't really have a name. I never have names. I don't know. But I do agree on the identity thing. I think it's important to have an identity, and you want a manager who has one, or can develop one at least. Who it will be, I have absolutely no idea, but I think,
definitely a progressive manager. Got to be a progressive head coach.
It's got
ID, philosophy. They can, as you say, work within the framework that's been.
I mean, in a funny sort of way, Arsenal might have to be brave. I mean, like they were all those years ago when they appointed Arsene Wenger, they might have to be brave again. And I'm thinking even if an Ancelotti comes in, but in 2 years, be brave again and go with someone potentially who's maybe not a punt, but someone who we're not thinking of. But let's see what happens.
Yeah. For my 2 cents worth, I don't want Ancelotti. I've already for my reasons. Check at AFC_Giles for my reasons why I don't want Ancelotti. Read it all there.
Shameless promoting there, but
Shameless.
don't worry, we'll let that go.
Last but not least,
to be fair, an hour and 20 minutes in, people are probably bored by now and switched off.
Last but not least, favourite memory of Francis Coquelin. Axe, favourite memory.
Oh man. That one block when he was, excuse me, sorry, he was kind of in the air. Like, he literally blocked. I can't remember who it was against, but he kind of went
against Rooney,
for it.
Man United.
Was it Rooney? Yeah, he was in the air, man.
Yeah.
It was just, that guy never hid, right? Let's just have a Francis Coquelin moment here, because I have a shirt with Coquelin on the back because I play five-a-side football and I just bought a shirt just to play football in, and people ask me, Coquelin, why the hell have you got Coquelin on the back? And it reminded me a lot of myself, like really rubbish on the ball, but puts himself about a bit, tries to break it up, tries to give it to the better players, and every so often thinks he's Zinedine Zidane with the long ball, So Francis Coquelin, I mean, the guy never hid. The guy was, he was a leader as well. When he was on that pitch, he was ever talking, and we all remember when he came back from Charlton and he played at West Ham and he played well, and then he started playing a little bit more and more and more, and the partnership with Santi. You just think if Francis Coquelin was a little bit better on the ball, then he could have been, and he could have been a terrific player for this football club, and that's why him and Santi worked so well, because Santi was good enough for two of them on the ball. So, but yeah, nothing but respect for someone like Francis Coquelin, who's, he's been here a lot, he's been on loan, he's been back, he's been on loan, he's been back again, but he's never really moaned. You haven't heard him in the media piping up. He's always been one of those that, even on the bench, he's always been a positive influence and stuff like that. So, best of luck to him. Good luck, and I hope it works out for him. Is it Valencia he's gone to?
Yeah.
So,
every team needs a Rottweiler, and he was ours, and I will miss him. I know he was dumb at times, especially in that North London derby where he got sent off. But there were two moments. There was the Wayne Rooney block. Do you remember where he spread eagled his legs?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, was that the one? And then and then the shimmy. Was it in the FA Cup final against Chelsea? He did the Ronaldo step over, which I thought was just bloody brilliant. I was like, look at the cock block, laying it on thick right there. It just was brilliant, So I think we need players like that. That's why I miss Poldy. He was a character, a personality. And I think every team needs characters and personalities. And right now, I'm hoping Kolasinac develops into that because I really like him. But yeah, those are my favourite cock moments.
Chris?
I got two. So a serious one, which is when we beat Man City 2-0 at their place, and he went absolutely ballistically, pumping his fist at the away fans. That was good to see. And then was it the one this season? I can't even remember if it was this season or last season where he did his hamstring in.
Yeah.
And then
got shot.
Jumped in the air. Like
this season.
He'd done his hamstring in and then jumped up in the air. Like literally, he was vertically jumping. Yeah, it was brilliant.
I tell you what, you've got to if you haven't seen it already, there's a guy called Scott at Crack Dealer FC. He's listed about 10 of Coquelin's favourite moments, and the descriptions, the captions are absolutely fantastic. So do try and check that out. We're gonna wrap it up here. I'm gonna thank my esteemed colleagues for coming. I've got Akhil at Ken Akhil. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, no problem at all. Yeah, sorry.
This dry January is really affecting your mind.
It's killing me, man. It's literally killing me.
Also, Sophie, you can catch her at Soccer Diva and also on her new pod, the at Highbury and Heels pod. Thank you very much for coming on, Sophie.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Thanks,
and good luck with your dry January there.
Yeah, I'm struggling.
Last but not least, Suburban Gooner Chris, thank you again for coming on, sir.
Anytime, sir. Anytime.
Start writing that blog.
Exactly.
All right.
And that's been a Gooner Ramble podcast. I've been your host, Giles. Catch me at AFC_Giles. Catch us on all the platforms. Do subscribe, do like, do rate, do comment. Give us some feedback. Catch us again after the Bournemouth game. Thank you. Good night. And up your Arsenal.
Up the Arsenal.
This episode of the Gooner Ramble is sponsored by the new sporting betting app called Bookie. That's BOOKEE. Sign up using the promo code podcast. Deposit and bet £10 in multiple bets for a free £10 bet. Please bet responsibly.